Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. We are in deep into free agency, and now the draft stuff is starting up in full swing. We've had the combines. We're now looking at the pro days. We're starting to hear leaks of interviews that the Saints have had, and the latest one is now Cam Ward. Cam Ward came out, I think it was today, came out and said that he grew up watching Drew Brees and Sean Payton, and that it would be his dream to play for the New Orleans Saints. And my opinion is it would be a dream for the Saints to be in a position to draft him.
Yes.
Because, quite frankly, there's too many quarterback-needy teams. If Tennessee were to pass on him, I mean, you're looking at the Giants, the Raiders, a lot of teams that need the Steelers trading up. There's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks that would anxiously try and get into the top five, at least, to get Cam Ward long before he fell to 9. And the last thing I'd ever want to do is trade up to go get Cam Ward. To me, he's just not that kind of player. This is not a Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, even a Jaden Daniels, or a player of that caliber. He's a good quarterback, probably could be a solid NFL starter, but you put him in other draft classes, he's probably ranked 5th or 6th best quarterback, but he's ranked 1st in this one just because of how weak this class is. This class reminds me a lot of the one that Kenny Pickett and those guys came out of. It's not a class. Hey, Anna, it's not a class that's really strong, deep, with a lot of can't miss prospects. This is kind of the anti-1983, 2004, even last season's quarterback class. There's a lot of guys in there who have a lot of risk involved in taking them. How do you read this situation? I mean, because last week was all Shedeur Sanders. That's all we seem to hear about. Shedeur is going to slide to 9. We should take him at 9. You got people saying we should take Jackson Dart at 9. And I'm just like, they're not the 9th best player in this draft. There's too much talent out there, and the Saints have too many needs to take a quarterback at 9. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And it's not that I dislike Shedeur Sanders as a player.
Exactly.
I hate the drama that's going to come along with him.
Mm-hmm.
I like Jalen Milroe as a player. I don't mind Jackson Dart as a player, but I personally don't have first round grades on any of them. So your comparison to the Kenny Pickett class of a couple years ago, 100% accurate. Where Pickett was the only quarterback to be drafted in the first round that year. And, I told all my Steeler friends when they drafted him, I said, in 2 years, you guys are going to be looking for a quarterback again. And 2 years later, they're looking for a quarterback again. Cam Ward is the only first round grade I have for this quarterback class. And I like Cam a lot. If he fell to 9 somehow miraculously, I wouldn't be mad at all if the Saints drafted him. But I agree with you that you have the Titans, the Browns, the Giants, the Raiders, the Steelers that for sure need quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. The Jets, unless they somehow think Justin Fields is really the answer. You could throw the Jets in that mix, and probably a couple other teams. I don't think, barring a biblical miracle, that Cam Ward falls to number 9 in the Saints, and I think the Saints would be absolute moronic to trade up to get him, because I do agree with you. He's not that kind of play. He's not the kind of player that you move heaven and earth. You basically sell off your franchise to go get and rebuild your franchise around. Because the Cam Ward film that I have seen, yes, very electric athlete, but elongated release, a little bit slow decision making, especially from the pocket. Well, we all saw the Saints line last year, and as of yet, they have not made any improvements to that line. In fact, with Lucas Patrick on the free agent market, you could say that if they had to suit up right now, this is a worse offensive line. You're going to get Cam Ward killed. You're going to get any young quarterback killed. So I believe that this is what the Saints were going to do too, but I believe that what you should do, and we've talked about it several times, is if you don't have a quarterback, then your only alternative, the two alternatives is to either reach out of desperation, which is what bad teams, football teams do, or you build your team around the quarterback position. So that way, when you have an opportunity to get one, he steps into a ready-made, potentially winning right away situation. And I hope that that's what Kellen Moore and this organization will do. And frankly, I think that that's what they will do.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned there's two ways to build a team. Okay. Number one, you start with the first building block, and that is a quarterback, a franchise quarterback, and you build it around his skill set. If you pick the wrong cornerstone, though, you're wasting and spinning your wheels trying to build that around that cornerstone, because then you have to throw the cornerstone away and you're starting from ground zero again. And the other way is the way I think the Saints are trying to build a team right now, is they're trying to build a competitive team, a team that is got a bridge quarterback in Derek Carr, who they have to pay for at least another year. And once you get past that year, now you're looking at, okay, it's time for us to find our quarterback of the future. Do we find him in this draft, or do we find him in the next draft? In the meantime, we're going to put pieces in place with this draft class, so when we get our franchise quarterback, he's not starting at ground zero. He actually has some talent around him. And I think that's where the Saints are, and I think that's where they are looking at this draft class as, okay, if I see a quarterback I really like, I may take him if he's on my board and he's the best available player. But for the most part, I'm just taking best available player across the board. I'm not reaching to take a quarterback at 9 just because I need to have that first round pick. In that first round pick contract. I may take a quarterback in the 3rd round. I may take a quarterback at 40. We don't know how they have this board put together. But you mentioned Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, Will Howard, Riley Leonard, just a handful. Schlau, I think is how you say his name. The kid from it's not Kansas State. Where is he from? Missouri?
Oh, Tyler, yeah.
Tyler Slough.
Yeah, where Kellen Moore's younger brother is the offensive coordinator, by the way.
Exactly. Those are guys that they could pick between the 2nd and, they don't have a 5th round pick, but 2nd and 4th, somewhere around there. As guys they may take a shot at, put them in competition with Spencer Rattler, see if Spencer Rattler is somebody worth a damn in developing. And if he's not, maybe we go with this other rookie and see what this rookie can do. And maybe we can see if we can develop this guy into something. But in the meantime, we're going to build our defense back up, get us an edge rusher. we need an offensive guard. We need more receivers. We need more running backs. We need more offensive linemen. That's how you have to look at this draft. You can't look at it as, okay, we're just going to suck this year, screw this draft class, because we need our quarterback, and that's when we'll actually start a rebuilding project. Once Derek Carr is gone, we can start with our quarterback, and then we start putting pieces together around him. So for a year, let's just say that the kid from Aller from Penn State's the Saints pick because they stink this year, and they're picking in the top 5. Okay, and they get Aller from Penn State. Well, then the 2026 season, he's a pinata back there because we didn't surround him with good picks because we decided F all on this draft class and build around our new quarterback. It doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense to me, and this is where I'm looking at. And Flavor Dave, I'm thinking about. I sort of agree with this, but I kind of have an edge rusher, the Georgia edge rusher, Williams, as my pick at 9. If not him, the cornerback. Although I really don't want to take a cornerback at 9, we need a cornerback because I think you're going to have to put somebody, a rookie, probably as a starter, with moving Alante back to the nickel spot to go opposite Kool-Aid McKinstry. What do you see at number 9 then, if we're not going to take a quarterback?
And I'm really interested to see how the board plays out. I know the flavor of choice right now for a lot of Saints fans is Tet McMillan, the receiver from Arizona, and I could see why. I mean, Ted has some nice film out there. He's a football player, but I keep coming back to the defense, and I keep reminding people. Guys, remember, this was the 30th ranked defense in the NFL last year. And combined from your edge rushers, combined, all of them had 17 sacks in 2024. And I know it goes beyond sacks. They had the pressures, they had they had the quarterback hits. They did. But it wasn't enough to alter the game that much because they were only ranked 27th against the pass, and they had, in addition to the lack of sacks, they had an astonishing lack of tackles for loss. So my point is, you need a difference maker out there. Don't tell me it's Chase Young. I don't mind the Chase Young re-signing, but he's a complementary piece. You need a difference maker on the other side, and if you get one, Chase Young, in my opinion, is all of a sudden a 10 sack a year guy. Very similar situation to what older Saints fans remember in Ricky Williams and Pat Swilling. I think Pat Swilling is a much, 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 much better player than what Chase Young will ever be. But my point still stands, and that's why I think you don't reach for an edge rusher here. Abdul Carter, we assume, is going to be off the board. Michael Williams is my pick too right now. I had him in my full mock draft article this morning. But if edge rushers for some reason start going early, Williams comes off. Pierce from Tennessee comes off. Abdul Carter's gone. Then you let the board, as I like to say, you let the board come to you. Jalon Walker from Georgia, good possibility there. But you don't reach for any position if you're the Saints, mainly because reaching in recent drafts for you hasn't turned out very well, has it? And B, there are so many needs on this team. Okay, our top 3 edge rushers are gone. We need a cornerback. Will Campbell from Michigan is still on the board. The kid from East Carolina, who I know for a fact they love, he's still on the board. Ravel. Barron from Texas is still there. They're all bona fide first round draft choices. If they go, or you have them ranked a little bit differently than maybe I do, then okay. Who's the best offensive lineman on the board? Will Campbell from LSU, if he's still there. Some have him projected to guard. We need a guard desperately. Boom. So I think the Saints are in a unique position where they can let the board come to them. And, Sean Payton used to talk about this all the time. If there's 4 or 5 players that are still there at 9, 4 or 5 of your top choices are still there, and you have offers to trade back and pick up more picks, then you start doing that with that draft math. And if we move back 4 spots, we're guaranteed to get one of these players that we still want. And that's not the way Mickey Loomis thinks, unfortunately. That's why my mock drafts never project trades. That, and it's just too much of a mess to get into. My point is they are in a good spot for a change where they can let the board come to them, and if they're smart, still come out of this with an immediate starter.
You see this Evinrude in a cesspool right here? John Butler. Stirring up shit, man. Yeah. Okay. 3 firsts. It's amazing how he keeps sticking around. It really is. But again, like a lot of guys, this just shows he really isn't a bust because people see the talent. He just can't stay healthy, and his pain threshold is non-existent. I mean, any injury really affects this guy. So I like Jalen Walker at 9. I really, really do, Flavor Dave. I'm telling you that right now. I just don't think he makes it to us at 9 because I do think there's going to be a run on edge rushers. This is the hard part for me for 9 because I'm identifying, like you said, about 5 players. I've got 5 players in mind at 9 who realistically I think will be there. Genty is one. I think Starks, Warren, Johnson, probably Campbell are all going to be there, as well as Williams. Okay, so then I'm looking at this draft going, okay, so if I don't take an edge rusher now, how far or how many edge rushers are going to come off this board before I pick again at 40?
Exactly.
If I can drop back a few picks, maybe I can go get another edge rusher later in the draft. I really don't like what's this kid's name? I'm trying to remember this kid's name. He only has like 3 sacks in his entire career, but he's projected to be a first-round edge rusher. What is this kid's name? I'm trying to remember it. I cannot remember this kid's name. Hang on. I'm probably talking shit about the guy I'm talking about picking right now.
You're talking about the A&M kid.
Yes. Yeah,
Shamar Stewart, and I'm right there with you.
Yeah,
he's a 2nd-round pick.
Yeah,
but he's going to go in the 1st.
They have him going in the 1st, so I don't feel comfortable taking him at 40. No. Because I don't want an edge rusher who has 3 career sacks because, we made fun of John Butler just now, but here's Davenport. You're talking about him, the potential behind him. You're hoping to see him be better to take a step up in the NFL. Stewart, you're asking to take a huge step up.
Yeah.
And last year in the 2nd round, we took, or not last year, but 2 years ago, we took the Notre Dame kid. Was it last year, Walker?
No, it was 2 years ago for Foskey. 2 years ago,
Foskey. And he is Notre Dame now. This is not San Antonio State University. This is Notre Dame. And he was the all-time sack leader at Notre Dame. And we don't have any sacks from this guy. We have very little production out of this guy. So making me take a leap of faith at a guy who's only produced 3 sacks in college and think he's going to turn out to be the pro,
right?
A sack monster in the pro. I just can't do. I just can't do that. So That's why I'm leaning towards an edge rusher at 9 over Genty. I don't think McMillan makes it past the not the Arizona Cardinals. I was just looking at this because the Arizona Cardinals just took a receiver. I don't think he makes it past New England. That's who it was, New England.
No, I think you're right.
Because they've got a good quarterback. Now you got to get him a receiver. So Drake May to McMillan, that's got Patriots written all over it. I think the decision comes with picks 2 and 3. What do the Browns and what do the Giants do at 2 and 3? Because most of us thought that the Giants would take a quarterback at 3. The Browns may take a quarterback at 2 now.
Would not surprise me.
So, if the Titans, for example, throw the whole board out of whack by taking, an edge rusher at number 1 overall, maybe take Abdul Carter number 1 overall, I think the Browns race to the board to get Cam Ward. And then that leaves the Giants with, okay, what do you do here? And then the Patriots are sitting right behind them waiting with McMillan's name written on the card. They're waiting to run that up as soon as the Giants make their pick. And I think that's how I'm looking at this draft. I take Mikael Williams at 9. That leaves Tyler Warren, Will Johnson, and more than likely Ashton Genty all still on the board. So if I decide I don't want to take a guy at 9, I'll start entertaining trade offers. How far down do I want to go?
Exactly.
I love the idea of trading with Dallas. I would be on the phone with Jerry Jones the whole time going, Jerry, if you really want Genty, he's going to fall to 9. He might not make it past the Bears and the 49ers. You really should trade us your first round pick and probably your third round pick. Give me another third. Or if Sean Payton is chomping at the bit. Now 20 is a pretty far drop.
Yeah.
But if Sean Payton's chomping at the bit, I can get his first, his second, and his fourth out of this one. Pittsburgh is a pick behind him. If Shedeur Sanders is still on the board, hey, Pittsburgh, do you really want to have to deal with either Aaron Rodgers or bring back Russell Wilson? Or you can go take Sanders right now.
Man, what a choice.
Yeah.
What a choice between soap operas. You got Aaron Rodgers, Deion Sanders, and the Russell Wilson entourage. My God, poor Mike Tomlin.
Yeah. The only downside of trading that far back is now you're really looking at a big run on a lot of key players that could help your team out.
Yeah.
And as much as I like this draft, the middle of this draft, I always seem to like the middle of the draft, but as much as I like the middle of this draft, now you're looking at guys like you might end up taking the Ohio State receiver in the first round, Aguba, if you're picking 20, 21, you may be looking at the running back from North Carolina now at 20 or 21, which is not Travion Henderson, Omarion Hampton, who's a bulldozer at running back. He's not a speed burner. He's what we've been looking for to complement Alvin Kamara for a long time. A guy who moves the pile. 6'1", 6 foot, 220, just built like a brick house. Built like friggin' Reacher. I mean, just a big dude. But now you're running into the problem with edge rusher. You may end up looking at the Marshall edge rusher at 40. And that's the hard part about this whole thing. You're kind of projecting who's going to slide, how far are they going to slide and why are they going to slide?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the hard part for me. How do you see 9 playing out? I mean, we said the guys we like, but how far would you trade down if you had a trade down offer? And who are your guys you have kind of slotted in that range? Your top 5 guys you'd like to see the Saints look at 9.
Given the team needs. I mean, Tyler Warren's my guy. I mean, he's not just the best tight end in this class. If you've watched Penn State football, he does a lot of the same kind of things that Taysom Hill does for the Saints. He'll take direct snaps. He'll rush it out of the backfield. He'll take end arounds. He'll line up in a slot. He'll line up from in line. But I almost see Tyler Warren as a luxury for the New Orleans Saints, mainly because they just re-signed Juwan Johnson. And I'm not ready to flip a wig over Juwan, the Juwan re-signing. I understand the logic behind it. But now that doesn't diminish, but reduces your need for a difference maker at tight end. I agree with you. I don't think Tet McMillan is going to be there. And I like Ibuka from Ohio State. Matter of fact, I love him. But you already have one of those in Chris Olave.
Yeah.
If you're going to draft a wide receiver in the first 2 days and you're the New Orleans Saints, it has to be that big-bodied guy, that big-bodied matchup weapon, the CD Lamb, the Quentin Johnston, the A.J. Brown. And I said those 3 names specifically because that's who Kellen Moore has had as his offensive coordinator. So, I keep going back to defense. You got to put the passer, the opposing quarterback on the ground. You got to create disruption. You don't have guys that do that right now. If Michael Williams, Abdul Carter, and James Pierce, who I really like, if they're all off the board, then I say you don't reach. So if they're all off the board, then you stand a pretty good chance that Will Johnson is going to be there, or Jalen Walker is going to be there. Those are difference makers. You have one, a legitimate potential, we think, legitimate shutdown cornerback, and you have a difference maker at linebacker, one who can rush the passer and play off ball, a lot like Demario Davis does for your defense. So we know what kind of transformation Demario had when he came to the Saints. So outside of Michael Williams, I'm looking at Will Campbell. I'm looking at Walker. Those are my top 3 guys, and then after that, there's a big drop. Because Genty would be great to have, but again, I look at the roster. You already have Alvin Kamara. You do need a running back out of this draft, but you can get one that will contribute for you in day 2, maybe even early in day 3. So just like with Tyler Warren, you get an impact player if you draft a Genty, but you still have several big holes on your roster to fill that are bigger than running back, tight end, and wide receiver. And that's why if they stay at 9, the board plays out to where they're going to get. If they don't pick a guy that fills in one of their biggest holes, then they ain't trying.
Yeah. One of the rules of thumb used to be about your first round pick. Your first round pick has to be an all-pro, perennial Pro Bowler, difference maker. Either on offense, a defensive coordinator has to figure out how to stop, or on defense, a guy that an offensive coordinator says, how do we handle him? And Mike Detillier puts it as simply as, you want a guy who's going to put a lot of points on the board for you on offense, or you want a guy whose job is to stop that offense from scoring points and put that quarterback on his butt. So that's why I'm leaning towards edge rusher. Again, I know people are like, man, not another damn Marcus Davenport, not another damn Peyton Turner. We need an explosive skill maker. The sexy picks. Quarterbacks are sexy picks. Receivers, sexy picks. Running backs, sexy picks. And I get that, but to me, I think so many edge rushers come off the board so early that the gap, especially if you're going to a 3-4 defense, which opens so much more opportunities now for you to get an edge rusher, because what we traditionally look for an edge rusher is a guy with freakish athletic size, 6'4" to 6'6", with arms that go down below his kneecaps and huge hands, and somebody who can bat balls down, weighs 285 and runs a sub 4.4 and just manhandles offensive tackles. Well, that's not the prototype anymore we're looking for.
No.
We're now looking at speed edge guys. So I'm looking at somebody who is going to be, I don't know, start throwing names out like the Hassan Riddick when he was with the Eagles. The kid from the Cowboys whose name escapes me right now, number 11.
Micah Parsons.
Micah Parsons. Thank you. I just drew a blank. I kept thinking about the guy from Arizona for some reason, and it's not him. But yeah, you're looking for a guy who teams have to be aware of. How are we going to handle this guy? So I'm looking at a Walker, who I would love if he fell to 9, or Williams, who I think is the second best after Walker. I think Walker is the better guy, but a guy like that. And then Calvin's kind of guy. He wants the big run stuffing nose tackle. I think you can get those guys later. I'm looking at a guy. I know this is just ridiculous because he may not pan out at all, but because of the number of defensive tackles that are on this team now, and we made the trade for Godshaw, a guy like Cam Jackson from over there in Florida, who's really a 2-down guy, but he's a big, wide body for those rushing downs to stop the run. And that's one of the things that's important in this defense is we have to get better at stopping the run.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the people that would love to have Mason Graham or the other Michigan defensive tackle, Kenny Grant.
Yeah,
I love both of them.
Me too.
But you're not running a 4-3 anymore. If you were, then you get one of those guys, and that's going to transform your defense. But you're not. So you need a Vita Vea or a Casey Hampton to reach back a few years, or a Jim Burt to reach back a few more years. Just that big refrigerator wide guy that's going to push blocking backwards, tie up blockers, clog running lanes, because that's going to make your outside guys that much better. It's not going to be pretty on the stat sheet. It's not going to earn a lot of highlight reels on Sports Center or anything like that, but it's going to be very effective. That's why they traded for Godshaw, because Godshaw is that kind of player, but that's not the kind of player you don't find, and you don't look for a nose tackle in the first 2 days of the draft anymore when you're running a 3-4. You just don't. It doesn't make any sense.
No. So you're looking at a guy. That's why I'm saying you're looking at him late, and they're probably a project kind of guy. Calvin's guy is DeAndre Walker from Kentucky, 6'7", 340. I mean, that's a friggin' boulder right in the middle of the defense. You're not running on a defense.
I have
linebackers clean.
Right, and that's not something that's happened the last 2 years. My guy is, and I like Walker too. Calvin. And my mock earlier that I published this morning, I had Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia, who goes about 6'5", 330.
Yep. That's why I have Cam Jackson. He's 6'6", 340. He you got to watch his weight, which you have to watch the weight of a lot of these kind of guys. I mean, you don't get 340 just doesn't happen, baby. You don't get his body by accident. You work at that, and you work at that eating a lot of bad food. But he's somebody that you would put in. You take a shot later in the draft, towards the end of the draft. somebody that you're going to rotate in for obvious running downs. And then if he shows that he has a little bit of push, you can develop him into a bit of not really a pass rusher, but somebody who ties up blocks to free your linebackers. Then he starts playing on third down like Vita Vea did. You know.
And not to interrupt you, but a guy to watch. It's already on the roster, and I wrote about this a couple weeks back, right after they hired Brandon Staley. Christian Boyd, their their sixth round pick last year. He has exactly that type of build that we talked about. With our guys, with Walker, with Cam Jackson, with Stackhouse. I look for Boyd, and if you recall on the draft show last year. I'd written a preview article, a profile article on Boyd coming into the draft, but I said in that profile article he doesn't really fit the Saints 4-3 system. He's more of a prototype nose tackle, not a slasher. Inside, just a guy, just a brute, that ties up and pushes people downhill. So you have that guy on the roster now, and you brought in Godshaw also. I look for Christian Boyd to make a big jump in his second year.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that, and I think they're hedging at bets across the board, and that's really the next thing I'm gonna go into. The Saints signing back a lot of old familiar names. They brought back Cam Jordan again. You now have Will Clapp back in the fold. You have Issac Yidham after they tried to get Ward from the 49ers. Indianapolis threw more money at him, but now you're looking at getting now you brought in Issac Yidham. So you're bringing back a lot of familiar faces to the team. As a result, some fans are looking at this going, what are we doing here? Are we trying to rebuild the 2022 Saints here? What's the thinking behind this? I look at this as these are guys that are familiar with what you do in this building, guys that are familiar with these coaches and their bodies right now. They're guys, you didn't have depth last year. You were bringing in guys off the street because you had so many injuries. To me, it seems like they're bringing in guys, again, this is going to be my depth, but these aren't necessarily going to be the guys I'm building my team around. Is that how you see this?
Yeah, 100%. And you talk about it all the time. Your free agency additions, unless you hit on one or two big splashes, your free agency additions should be guys that will be able to play if you're not able to address the position in the draft. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing Juwan Johnson brought back. Juwan, we know at Juwan Johnson's best, he's a matchup problem for defenses. Defenses have to not game plan for him, but figure out a way to try to stop him. Yeah, he's inconsistent. Yeah, he gets the dropsies. Yeah, he's not the best. We know all the yes. But we also know that he creates problems for defenses, and Derek Carr's comfortable with him. Will Clapp, he's familiar playing beside Eric McCoy. He's done it before. He's familiar playing beside Cesar Ruiz, Trevor Penning. He's done it before. He's familiar playing for Kellen Moore. He's done it before. Issac Yidham, people forget how good a year Yidham had a couple years ago. When Marshawn Lattimore was out with that abdominal injury, Yidham really, really stepped up. Again, is that the answer for the position? No. But if you don't get a cornerback in day one or day two of the draft, then you can roll out with McKinstry, Yidham, and Alontae Taylor at cornerback, and you can handle most teams' receiving cores. Chase Young, we think that Chase Young is going to be a better fit in Brandon Staley's scheme than he was in Dennis Allen's or the previous schemes with Washington and San Francisco. Shedeur Sanders, they make sense because, again, like we talked about towards the beginning of the show, you need the bodies at defensive tackle. Defensive tackle, the 3-4 defensive end, which is a glorified defensive tackle if you're moving edge rushers up. So all these signings actually make sense to me. Justin Reed, you badly needed a safety, so you signed one of the better. I'm not going to say the best one because in my opinion he's not, but he's one of the better safeties that was available on the market. Has experience playing beside Tyrann Mathieu. So you have experience on that back end with as much as I liked Will Harris, Justin Reed is a better player than what Will Harris is. So you upgraded there. Again, you brought back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He showed you something down the stretch of last year, even though he was playing with JV blockers in front of him on the offensive line. So all these signings make sense. And every single one of them, again, like we said before, it doesn't eliminate, but it at least diminishes some of the needs at these different positions if you cannot address them in the draft.
And that's the key. You're not going to address them. But if you make the decision, for example, to pass on Will Johnson because you're going to go edge rusher here, you're not going, all right, so I got to take a cornerback now at 40 because I did not take him at 9. And if I don't take him at 40, now I'm not going to take him to the 3rd round. And then we're looking at the talent level dropping on this, and where am I going to get my guy from? I still want them to sign Asante Samuel.
Asante Samuel, yes, sir, absolutely.
I still want them to do that because while Yidham was really good, Dennis Allen was his coordinator, and of all Dennis Allen's negatives, the one glaring positive is that dude knew defensive backs.
Yes, sir.
He
did.
He could squeeze something out of a defensive back. I don't know what the key was, how he did it, but Rico Payton, Isaac Yidham, PJ Williams. He even got stuff out of Ken Crawley.
Yeah.
Guys that had no business really starting for you. And he was able to start with these guys. Jackrabbit, who was past his prime. I think if we had Corey White and what's that kid, Patrick? What the fuck was his name?
Patrick Robinson?
No, not Patrick Robinson. No, Johnny Patrick.
Patrick,
the guy who gave up the touchdowns in 2012, almost comeback by the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
He could have done something with those guys. I mean, he just has that magic touch. Maybe because he was defensive back. He was defensive backs coach back in 2009 for the Saints when he got a miracle year out of He Who Shall Not Be Named, but was number 42. So he really he had his moments. So I'm kind of worried about Yidham without Dennis Allen. Although he was solid with the 49ers, he wasn't. I wouldn't feel comfortable with him as a starter. That's why I want Asante Samuel in.
I'll agree with that. Yeah, I'll agree with that. And the fact that Asante is still out there, it is encouraging, and I'm really hoping that the Saints, target him next.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you talk, now you talk about you've added Asante Samuel, you've added Isaac Yidham, you have Justin Reed on the back end with Tyrann Mathieu. I still want him to add another safety in the draft, even more so than a cornerback. But you can face just about any offense with that secondary and feel pretty confident in your results, as long as you put pressure on the quarterback. Which again, we circle right back around to the same topic, that you and I seem to be in agreement over.
Yes, and because I think the more I think about it, because I've done about a dozen mock drafts, and I'm going sexy pick all the time. I'm taking Genty, I'm taking Warren. McMillan sometimes falls to me. I'm taking McMillan. I'm trading down, and I'm taking the receiver from Missouri, Luther Broughton, I think. Bolden the third. I'm taking a lot of the sexy picks in the first round because That's just my mindset. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to score points. But my brain is telling me, no, you take the edge rusher here. You take your edge rusher, and then in your second round, you go offense in your second round. Offense now, you're looking at running back, you're looking at receiver, you're looking at those kind of guys. The position I have not taken until as early as the fourth round is the position I want to talk about now, because we need a receiver. We went after my boy Cooper Kupp. He took the money and stayed in the NFC West with the Seahawks, and I wasn't expecting huge things out of the Seahawks. I mean out of Cooper Kupp. I was expecting a guy who was going to be a third receiving option, a guy who maybe catches 50 passes all year, but he's a voice in the locker room. He is the guy you go to on third down. Kupp's off the board. Now, what do we do at receiver? And what do we do at guard? And I haven't looked at a guard taking an offensive lineman to the fourth round, and I'm talking guys like Charles Grant from William and Mary, who can play tackle or guard. People like that. I'm not looking at an offensive lineman in the first three rounds at all. But clearly, we need a starting guard. So, what's out there in free agency? And how much of a priority would you have in the draft at getting a guard?
I would put a lot more priority on a guard than I would wide receiver, because again, just like we talked about the defensive backfield, you can roll with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed and create a lot of damage to opponents. We've seen it. I thought Bub Means was coming along pretty nicely last year before he got hurt too. Does that mean that ideally, would you want to go into the season that way? No. Especially with a concussion just waiting to happen for Olave. It's a big roll of the dice. But you look at what you have on the roster right now, and I feel a hell of a lot more comfortable about the wide receiver spot than I do interior line. Because when you're let's take Eric McCoy out of the mix. When your best interior lineman outside of him is Cesar Ruiz, you got issues. Yeah, you got big issues, and unfortunately, I think the best guard that would have fit their system was Mekhi Becton, and to my knowledge, they didn't really heavily pursue him, and if they did, he's gone now. There are other guys out there that have starting experience that are a little bit older, Dalton Risner, Will Hernandez, Scherf, Brandon Scherf. And the guy every Saint fans wants is Tevin Jenkins. And with his injury history, that surprises me. It's funny. You people will criticize if a Saint gets injured one time, he's injury prone. But if if a guy outside the building has had a lengthy history of injuries, you want him in here because you've seen film on him, or you've heard somebody talk good about him. So now you want him in here. I'm not knocking Jenkins, the player. I have said I think you draft a guard in day 2 and you bring in a veteran starter. The reason why you do both, we saw how thin this offensive line was and how the whole shithouse of cards came tumbling down. Basically once the first offensive lineman, Eric McCoy, got hurt, everything just crumbled after that. So I do think you bring in a Will Hernandez, a Tevin Jenkins, Brandon Scherf, one of those guys, somebody who can start for you immediately if necessary, or at the very least be a swing starter. So that way, when, not if, you start losing guys on your starter, you don't have to turn to a Shane Lemieux or a Will Clapp. God bless his soul. I know he's back in the building. You don't want to have to start those guys. Those are some of the guys available in free agency. The draft, Tyler Booker is going to be, unless you think that LSU's Will Campbell is going to be a guard. If you think he's a tackle or you have him slotted at tackle, then Tyler Booker from Alabama is going to be the first guard off the board. he might be a guy that goes late in the first round. Outside of that, day 2 guys, second, third round, Wyatt Milam from West Virginia, Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, Tate Ratledge from Georgia, Dylan Fairchild from Georgia are the guys that are next, pretty much how I have them ranked. All of those guys are going to be gone maybe even before middle of the third round. So if you want a guard in the draft, you have to get him either at 40 or with your first of 2 third-round picks. With my mock, that's what I did with. I took Dylan Fairchild, in round 3. And I did a 3-round mock last month, just goofing around with some numbers. And I took Donovan Jackson in the 3rd round in that same spot.
Well, and Chris, we did mention Walker earlier in the show that we definitely want a big body guy, and that dude's massive, 6'7", 330 plus. I mean, that's a huge dude, and he would be an instant run stopper. He would make your defense light years better. When we're talking about Will Clapp coming back, I think they definitely looked at how this offensive line fell apart once McCoy went down, and Clapp did start at center for the Chargers, and he wasn't a liability as a starter. And I think that's what they're looking at him as a backup center, backup guard, not as a starter, but as a backup center, backup guard. So if McCoy gets hurt again, it's not going to be a complete disaster like it was last year. So again, where people are saying, look, we're looking at this going, we're looking at this guy going, we're putting the band back together again. No, they're looking at this going, when we got hurt, we were missing guys that could start in these roles. This guy is cheap. He has started in the league, and he did a good job. He's not an all-pro. He's not a Pro Bowler like McCoy is, but he is not going to cause your entire offensive line to collapse in the middle. And that's what they're trying to avoid. So that's where Will Clapp fits in. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, I need to do a mock draft where I put the guard up higher in my standings and not just go for the sexy picks. Chris also mentioned Scatterboo from Arizona State. I like him a lot. I like the 2 kids from Ohio State a lot.
Yep.
At running back. I feel like we definitely need a power inside runner. Mm-hmm. Somebody with an explosion out of the gate, too.
Yep.
Kind of like what you thought you were getting with Kendre Miller.
Right.
Just somebody who's more durable. How do we feel about Ruiz? The problem with Ruiz is he's good enough to start for you. Mm-hmm. If he was a 3rd-round pick, I would probably say you're getting a lot out of him as a 3rd-round pick. But he's a 1st-round pick. He should be that all-pro dominant guard, and he's not. And I think that's the weakness of Ruiz. He's a lot like Andres Pete in that regard. Mm-hmm. There's some plays he looks unbelievable. Some plays you can't believe he's starting in the NFL. Yes. And that's the problem you have at Ruiz. You have no consistency behind him. So I think we need to fill the left guard first and become left-handed for a little while, running the football. I think we can be right-handed to an extent because I think Trevor Penning is adequate, turned into a solid starter at right tackle. He's not a bust right now, but he has to keep taking steps forward. Mm-hmm. He's taken a step forward. He doesn't like a bust anymore. He actually looks like he's producing, mm-hmm. but he needs to take that next step to become a Pro Bowl quality right tackle. And that would make me feel a lot better about Ruiz if I felt like Penning covered up some of the weaknesses of Ruiz. Because I think McCoy can too.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, both Ruiz and Penning are good run blockers. Far better run blockers than they are pass protectors. The problem with Ruiz is once you get him out on the move, or where he has to react with any kind of agility whatsoever, he's a useless lump. He's a useless sack of cement. If you manage to run inside, inside pass rush tandems where you can pull McCoy away from Ruiz and you rush on the outside of Penning's shoulder, and Penning is not good when he has to be light on his feet either. You split your center and tackle and leave Ruiz on his own. He's becoming a human turnstile. That's the problem that I have with Cecil Ruiz. I agree with what you said about Penning, but the Saints are going to have to make a decision in the next 6 weeks on whether to pick up a fifth year option on Trevor Penning or not. We go back to what we would do at number 9. If Will Campbell is there, what if you take Will Campbell, you plug him in as a starter, as your left guard starter this year, with the idea that if they're not going to pick up the fifth year option on Penning. But if Penning balls out, they didn't pick up the 5th year option on Ruiz either, and he went and had his best season. They signed him to a contract extension, and then he went back to being Cecil Ruiz. If that same kind of thing happens with Penning, and you sign him to an extension, he plays well enough where you sign him to an extension. You have Campbell at left guard, ideally, playing well enough to be a first-round pick. You have your offensive line set. If Penning doesn't play that well where you don't offer him a contract extension, maybe you move Campbell back to the outside. Either way, you're again looking for an offensive lineman, whether it's another guard or another right tackle, in 2026. But there's another idea for number 9.
Yeah, I've thought about that. The problem is, I think Campbell is a guard. I
agree.
I don't think he's a tackle. I think he's a guard. So you're drafting him to be a guard. He could be a very good guard. He could be an all-pro guard, but it's hard for me to do that at 9. It really, really is. It's not hard for me to do at 14. That sounds weird, but it's just where I have him slotted in the top, my top 20, my personal top 20 on the board. I just like edge rushers ahead of him. And I like the cornerback ahead of him. And I like Warren and Genty ahead of him. So it's hard for me to take him at 9. And I think if there's something that, and this isn't directed at anybody in the chat, this isn't directed at anybody on social media who may be watching this right now. It's just, I'm making a general statement about Saints social media. They fall in love with a player, and it's in a need position, and they don't care where he ranks 1 through 20. They just want him at number 9. Because that's the first time the Saints pick. And I think that's where they run into problems. Because, as I keep saying, we go back to the quarterbacks, because it's always quarterback. That's the sexiest pick on the board. We need to take a quarterback in the first round because we haven't taken one since 1971, which personally I enjoy.
I do too.
I get a perverse enjoyment out of that because it's like they talk about the last quarterback taken in the first round for every single franchise, and they'll do the bar charts, and they'll show them all in the 2000s, maybe the 1990s, and here's the Saints all the way at 1971. And I find that hilarious. I just do. Because he's the only quarterback. I mean, Dave Wilson doesn't count because that was supplemental draft.
Right.
He's the only quarterback the Saints have ever taken in the first round.
In 58 years, that's beyond mind-boggling. That's biblical.
Yeah. And as bad as the Saints were from 1967 to 1987, 20 years, and then not winning a playoff game until 2000, and then Breeze comes in 2006. That you never took a quarterback at any point at any time, and I've gone through this before. I went through this. God, now it's 2018. I went through why the Saints have never taken a quarterback in the first round since Archie Manning. And a lot of it is because once you took Archie Manning, you got 11 years out of him. When you signed Drew Brees as a free agent, you got 16 years out of him. So now you're talking about, okay, so that's 27 years of the 54 years at the time of the franchise history. So now, now you look at Bobby Hebert. Bobby Hebert was around for throughout the 1990 season, but from 85 is when he signed him, but 85 to 92. Jim Everett was 94 to 97. 96 was his last year.
96, yeah.
Yeah, 96 was his last year. He was traded in 97. So, that's the thing about quarterbacks. Once you draft one, unless you draft busts and you're constantly going back and drafting another one like the Jets again and again and again in the first round, you generally aren't drafting quarterbacks. No, Chris, you're not going to get kicked out for saying ain'ts. I mean, that's a John Meekum era, so they're not going to kick you out. But despite what Anna says, but yeah, you don't draft quarterbacks very often, so it's not really weird that the Saints haven't drafted one. It's just weird that they never took an option. They always seem to find another way of getting a quarterback other than going through the draft, free agency, trades. That's how they get their quarterbacks. Aaron Brooks was a trade. Jim Everett was a trade. Bobby Hebert was a free agent out of the USFL. Wade Wilson was a free agent. Unfortunately, Heath Schuler was a trade. So that's just how it worked for him. So I just find it funny they haven't signed one.
I don't mean to be a John Butler here, but doesn't it almost feel like destiny that the next time the Saints will draft a quarterback in the first round, maybe a Manning?
That's what a lot of people want. I see more
definitely
tank for Arch. The problem is Arch isn't going to come out, I think, until 2027.
No, I don't think so either.
He's gonna start next year. He won't unless they win a national championship. I can't imagine him playing 1 year of college football and then moving on to the NFL.
I think if they win a national championship and he wins the Heisman Trophy, I think that's all the more reason he stays. Because I think I said this before. If there's one thing we know about the Mannings is that they care about their legacy. There's only been how many people have won the Heisman Trophy 2 times back to back? Only one. If Manning has a chance to do it, which by the way, his brothers didn't. Not brothers, his uncle and his dad didn't. If Arch has a chance to win 2. And back-to-back championships, with the Longhorns potentially, he ain't coming. He ain't coming out. He would stay.
Yeah. So to tank for Arch, you're tanking in 2027.
Get ready, Carr fans. Another restructure.
So yeah, that means another year of Carr. And I just don't see it. I would. I mean, I can remember in 2004. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, it was 2004. When Eli came out, me turning my father-in-law saying we should trade up to go get Eli because I wanted to, that was the year I wanted to get, a Manning at quarterback. Because we were at an awful game at the end of the 2004 season. Or 2003 season. I don't remember. I think it was 2003. And I was like, yeah, we should get our Eli. So But anyway, going back to what I was saying before, we're talking about the ninth overall pick. It's that decision. Do you take a quarterback or do you take the guy who's going to put other teams' quarterbacks on their butt? I think you take the guy who's going to put the other team's quarterback on his butt.
Mm-hmm.
All that said, now, so we said the importance of a guard. I'm gonna have to go back and look and see where I can get a guard now. Free agency looks like it's pretty much done as far as offensive linemen. They've re-signed Landon Young, by the way. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, they re-signed Landon Young today. So yet another example of bringing back the old gang. But receiver, we missed out on Cooper Kupp. I think if we brought a receiver in free agency, who is out there, and I think that lessens the need. We still need him because I trust Chris Olave to last about a quarter in the first game of the season. But who would you look at receiver, both in the draft and in free agency? And this is past McMillan. And past obvious first round picks, because I don't think any of them are worth number 9 other than McMillan. But saying at 40 or in round 3.
Well, I mean, first in free agency, there's still a few out there that that wouldn't be your number one guy, but you don't need him to be your number one guy. You just need him to be productive. Mm-hmm. The guy everybody wants is Keenan Allen. The dude is 125 years old. But I mean, it makes sense too, because he's played for Kellen Moore. Amari Cooper is still out there. Amari Cooper can still play. The guy I want, Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd, the former Bengal, had a down year with the Titans last year. Well, he didn't have a quarterback. Tyler Lockett's still out there. Robert Woods is still out there. It's a guy you and I both like. So there's guys out there that aren't going to break your salary cap. I would certainly like to see them bring one of those guys in the draft. I say it again. I like Ibuka. He'll probably be a first round pick, but you don't draft him at 9. Because again, even though Olave is fragile, he's a Chris Olave type of receiver. He's not that big bodied guy. Outside of that, I love Isaiah Bond from Texas, but that's another Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, I was just ready to say we don't need a Mr. Bond here because it's a sexy thing. And one of the things I noticed about Saints Twitter and Saints social media, they love speed guys. We got speed guys. We need bodies. We need big body guys, strong guys. So that knocks out an Isaiah Bond. That knocks out quite a few actually. But I'm waiting for this one name and see if you're going to bring him up.
There's a few that fit the big body profile. Savion Williams from TCU. He looks the part, but he doesn't have a lot of toughness in his game. So I don't know if I go that direction. I have him in my mock draft based off of potential alone. Restrepo, the productive kid from Miami, guy everybody loves, but he's a slot guy. He's 5'9".
Yeah.
Trey Harris. Trey Harris is interesting because you watch Trey Harris play and you think to yourself, he's not very big. He's a speed guy, but I mean, he's 6'2", 205. You and I hate quarterbacks that come from the Lane Kiffin system, but you have to like receivers that come from the Lane Kiffin system.
Yes.
Jack Beck from TCU, Savion Williams' teammate. I love Jack Beck. Obviously his story can't be beat, especially if he goes to the Saints. But I think Beck is going to come off the board a little bit too early. Beck might come off as early as the second round, and I think that's earlier than what. Yeah. That's earlier than what I think the Saints want to draft. If they don't draft Ted McMillan at 9, then I don't think you see the Saints draft their wideout until late in day 2 or maybe even early in day 3. And I could see why, because I don't like this wide receiver class for what the Saints need from it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm looking at guys. The first thing to look at is the size. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at guys that are 6 feet tall or taller. And I'm looking for guys who are about 210 to about 225 as far as receivers. So it knocks out guys like Isaiah Bond. It knocks out the kid from Miami. It really, takes out quite a few players. Jalen Noel from Iowa State. Guys that people look at as speed guys. So guys I'm looking at later in the draft, and there's one name I'm going to throw out there just because he's got ties to the Saints, and I'm showing his dad's big game right now on that TV behind me. That's the 2003 Giants Saints game where Joe Horn, the infamous cell phone game, Joe Horn caught 4 touchdown passes that night. But we'll talk about Jimmy Horn.
Jimmy Horn.
Yeah, in a minute. But guys I'm looking at, some of them, they've got red flags behind them, but I'm going to throw their names out anyway. Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. Big, tall kid, 6'3", 210. He's got the size you want, but he has problems holding on to the ball. Mm-hmm. Another guy who I do like a lot is Alec. I hope I pronounced this guy's name right. Aomana, Stanford. He's a Stanford receiver, 6'2", 210. He's actually a guy I can see the Saints, if he's there in the 4th round or at the end of the 3rd, that's where I see the Saints pulling the trigger on a guy like him. And then people are going to bite my head off for this guy, but Ty Felton from Maryland.
I like Ty Felton.
He is a MVS kind of receiver. He's wiry looking. He's not a big body guy. But he's tall for his build. He's 6'1", 185. He's kind of a speed guy. He's a 4'4" guy. But he's the kind of guy that he does make contested catches despite his size. The problem is he really needs to get into an NFL workout program where he puts some mass on, because he can get easily redirected off his route.
Yes.
Especially if you move him to the outside. Right now, he's almost a pure slot receiver.
Yeah, because he's, like you said, he's paper thin. But he high points the ball well. He runs his routes really well. He's a very precise route runner. Yes. When I was playing around with mocks, I rather than take Savion Williams, in the 4th, I believe is where I took him. I wanted to take Ty Felton later, but then as I'm going along, as I'm fiddling around with numbers, then I remember, I'm like, damn it, the Saints do not have a 5th round pick, because I think that's the range where I could see the Saints, just like they grabbed Bub Means with last year. The 4th or 5th round is, I think, where the Saints are going to look at a bigger bodied receiver.
What about Golden from Texas? I'm looking. Guys, if y'all see me looking down a lot, it's because I'm looking at my book here, because it's how I remember some of these people, because I start getting names confused and mispronounce people's names, so I want to make sure and look them up. Matthew Golden from Texas.
I like Golden a lot. He has nice body control on the sideline. Certainly big play. Big play threat. And he and Bond were just such a game-breaking duo. For the Longhorns team. But Golden doesn't play as physically as what I would like to see. He is about 6 foot. 200-ish pounds, maybe a couple pounds shy.
Yeah.
But I don't see a guy that goes across the middle a lot. And when I do, he's not a big factor in contested catch situations. So again, you already have a guy like that on your roster. He wears number 12. A
Yep.
lot of the guys at the top of this draft at this position this year, I said I didn't like the wide receivers in this draft. I should rephrase. I don't like the wide receivers for what the Saints need.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Chris Olaves in this class, but you already have a Chris Olave. So if a Chris Olave is available for you in say the 4th round, then it certainly doesn't hurt to bring him in. But you don't use an early round pick on a resource you already have.
Mm-hmm. And I'm the same. I'm in the same boat. When we started talking about when you were describing Golden, I'm going, that's Chris Olave. That's Chris Olave minus concussions. And yeah, I really want a physical receiver. And here's the problem with Jimmy Horn. When we talk about Joe Horn's kid, he's 5'8".
Yeah,
he's a speed guy. It's almost like bringing in Brandon Cooks again.
Yes.
I that's all right. That's why I got my book here. I have to do it all the time because I know last names. I start looking at last names, and that's what catches my eye. But yeah.
No, Alan's known me for many years, Truth, and he knows I start. There's black circles under my eyes because I stay up. I make my own film previews. I'm the Mike Detillier wannabe. I have notes and notes and notes full of my own draft analysis. And then I get the draft magazines. I'm waiting for mine to come in. And then I compare. But yeah, I mean, you and I are. I'm not going to call us draft experts, although Sean Williams used to. But we're definitely draft gurus. That's why it's so much fun to get together and talk on our when we do our Bayou Blitz draft.
Absolutely. I'm looking at this magazine. I don't know if you can see it or not. It is volume 19. That means I have 19 different years of this magazine.
Same.
I still have my Ricky Williams on the cover one from 1999. So just to let you know, that's how long I've been having these things. That 19 volumes. Wow. That is, well, wait, 19, that can't be right. Yeah, I guess it is. Then what the hell's the one I have of Ricky Williams? Because that was more than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I've got one Ricky Williams on the cover. So it may not be Lindy's. It may be somebody else's draft. It could be Athlon.
Athlon has done it for many years too.
Yeah, they're all in storage now. All my magazines in storage. I'm not allowed to have them in the house.
Lauren made me throw away all my Lindy's, when we moved in together because we have an apartment. So
yeah, my wife, she said, I don't understand why you keep these old magazines. I've never seen a human being keep magazines. I'm like, because I'm a collector. I collect things. Hoarder is an ugly word.
Yeah.
I have fantasy football magazines from 1992. So. And she's like, when are you ever going to look at this again? I'm like, it's cool to look back and see what I did back then. So whatever. But anyway, I do have the Ricky Williams one because I brought it with me to minicamp to get Ricky Williams to sign it.
Nice.
And he did not sign it. He wasn't signing shit. And kind of pissed me off. Billy Joe Hobart came over to sign stuff. I'm like, I don't want to sign signature from you. I want it from that guy who just ran out the damn field, didn't sign anything from anybody. So, whatever. But okay. So you guys are kind of seeing a theme that Bob and I are going with probably for the next month and a half. Next week, we're going to look at pick 40. And what I'd like to do is kind of look at each pick and kind of see what we think in this range, given the free agency movement, and assuming that we take a certain player, and then we'll do a mock draft, of course, the week of the draft. But that's kind of my goal for the next, 6 weeks, I guess, 4 to 6 weeks, because the draft to be on us. What is it? April.
In a month.
Yeah.
A month and a week, so 5 weeks.
Yeah, 5 weeks. So that should be enough time to go through the second, 2/3, 2/4, a sixth and a seventh. A sixth and a seventh, I think, is what you have left. So we'll kind of go through all these positions again, but we're going to shift the focus now to guys that we think will be there in the second round, guys that we think will be there in the third round, and so on. Yeah. And when I do my mocks, I try to avoid, but I can't help it, but I try to avoid going for the filling needs. I try and take best player available because I think in this case we need help everywhere. So
yeah,
best player available is the best way to go. All right, Bob, real quick, Bayou Blitz this week, tomorrow night or Thursday night?
No, we go tomorrow night. Well, I haven't heard from Brendan, so I assume we go tomorrow night. If I'm correct, then we'll be on the airways at 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 on the East Coast. Next week, as a personal programming reminder, I will not be able to join you on Under the Dome, and we will not have a Bayou Blitz. I will be flying into New Orleans, for a day. And then I'll be boarding a cruise ship with 6 former Saints players for Cozumel, Mexico. So I'm really excited for that. Those of you that do watch our Bayou Blitz, we have been part of the promotion for the now 11th Go Black and Gold charity fan cruise. I'm coming down. Lauren's coming down. Will is making his first trip to New Orleans and on a cruise ship. It's a little bit bittersweet because I won't be. I was hopeful to be able to do shows from the cruise ship, and I'm like, I don't want to interrupt these guys' vacation to do this. Because doing a show, I would only do a show from a cruise ship if I could grab a Pierre Thomas or a Lance Moore, Tyrone Hughes, Delvin Breaux, Michael Lewis. The guy, Courtney Roby, those are the guys that are going to be on this cruise. I'm hoping I'm going to get a little bit of interview time with them, but I doubt I do anything live. So I won't be able to join you guys, either you or Brendan next week. Maybe you guys can get together and do a memorial show. Since we know my ship's going to hit an iceberg in the Caribbean.
Hey, I was just looking at the Love Boat theme song. I was getting ready to play that while you were doing all that. But I just realized I've got my phone tied to the TV, so it's just going to go straight to the TV. So either I sing it or we just let you hear it in your own head.
It's already there.
Which I think is a better option. Be sure and get a drink from Isaac. Right there. Yeah. Well, good. Yeah. I'll probably, since we talked about draft gurus, my son, I've created a monster, and my son is a draft fanatic. So I will have him probably fill in for you next week. He's got a whole list of players, and he doesn't need a book. He's writing his own book too. He's got a list of players that he likes, and he goes through some names. You're absolutely right. We do need another Pierre Thomas, in the worst way. And actually, I'm going to get into that when we get into rounds 3 and 4. There are a couple Pierre Thomases out there I really, really like. Scatterboo's a favorite, but it's guys that are pass catching backs to watch for. So, but in the meantime, check out the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. Going into more draft talk, more free agent talk. Hopefully we get some things in with, look, it's Derek Carr. No, it's not. That's not Derek Carr. That's Todd Bauman right there at number 4 with the Saints.
See, folks, Derek Carr ain't so bad.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the game's already 45-7 at this point, so Bauman's just going to take the snaps and just run the game out. But we'll go into more draft, more free agent stuff next time. And in the meantime, check out Bayou Blitz tomorrow night, and we'll see you next week and Under the Dome. So good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.